Hey, welcome back to the stash. Now, if there's one thing the Amazing Spider-Man has abundance of, it's got to be villains. Our webhead, since his inception, has battled some of the most captivating and colorful foes in all of comics. From Dr. Octopus, to Kraven the Hunter, to the Green Goblin, to even the Chameleon...
Oh, my greatest foes! And the Chameleon!
But there's one character in particular that sticks out. One character who I think beats nearly all of the main Spidey villains in terms of just how weird he is. That character is the Jackal. The Jackal first appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 129. During that, he spent most of his time trying to trick the Punisher into killing the Amazing Spider-Man. Of course, Spidey manages to get out of yet another sticky situation, resulting in the Jackal swearing to destroy him. It's also important to mention that while this issue marked the first appearance of the Jackal, the man behind the mask was introduced way before this. Issue 31 of The Amazing Spider-Man, which is the beginning of one of the greatest Spidey stories ever, has a certain professor at Empire State University, Professor Miles Warren. During that, he seemed harmless enough, but as time went on, he was far from that. So, for today, we're diving deep into the Jackal's lore, his origins, his obsession, his horrors, and why he's arguably Spider-Man's freakiest villain. But hey, real quick, here at the stash, we're swinging for 20,000 subscribers by the end of the month. Now that's a tall order, I know, but with great power comes with great responsibility, and all you gotta do is click subscribe. So if you're into Spider-Man or just comic book deep dives, feel free to stick around. Also, be sure to stay to the very end for another episode of Comics from the Stash. This time I'll be going over the comics in my collection that feature this maniac, the Jackal. But with that all said, let's get right back into the video. Miles Warren is a professor of biochemistry/biology at Empire State University, and on the surface, he's a respected scientist, but beneath, he studied genetics and cloning, under the tutelage of the High Evolutionary, but failures haunted him. The man-jackal creature he created escaped and apparently killed his family, sending Miles Warren into instability. It's clear already that Warren's mind was fragile. He's touched the edge of monstrous science, and something broke. But where we truly see that is in the Parker and Stacy era. At ESU, he meets Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, the young genius and the brilliant student. There's admiration there that could be seen as normal for a teacher to have over a star pupil, but Warren went far beyond that. He was obsessed with Gwen. There was even some jealousy of Peter during that time too, but Gwen Stacy's murder by the Green Goblin inflicts him with a wound that never really healed. He blames Spider-Man. He can't accept her death, and so he becomes unhinged. This is the proper birth of the Jackal, with his creepy obsession of Gwen Stacy being right at the forefront of his twisted mind. After Gwen's death, Warren's behavior changes. He sneaks into his lab, he experiments, and tries to master the art of cloning. His assistant Anthony Serber even catches on, but Warren can't stop. So naturally, he creates a second persona, the Jackal. He fashions an honestly disturbing green suit that just kind of looks like the Green Goblin without any clothes on.
What?
Then, the Jackal attacks Spider-Man. He manipulates the Punisher in an attempt to not only end the Wallcrawler's life, but to also frame Frank for the murder so he gets off scot-free. Of course it doesn't work, and after many failed tries at getting his revenge, he executes possibly one of the biggest setups in comic history. He clones Spider-Man, and pits the two in a battle to the death without either knowing who's the real McCoy. Alright, so this is where things get really weird. Cloning, identity, the who's real, who's not kind of mess. During the original 70s stories and later in the massive 90s Clone Saga, Miles Warren just goes off the deep end. He starts cloning everyone, from Gwen to Peter and himself. Even the mistakes get names. Kane, Ben Reilly, as they're all born from the same obsession. The craziest part is how messy it all gets. Half the time, even he doesn't know which version of who is which, and by the end of the first saga, the Jackal dies at the Shea Stadium, except, surprise, that was just a clone. Yeah, that's a real common theme for the Jackal. Then, in the 90s, he comes back swinging, and this time, he doesn't just screw with Spider-Man's life, he screws with his entire sense of reality, because suddenly, there's another Peter Parker walking around, a guy who might be the real one, and for years, fans genuinely didn't know who was who, all thanks to the Jackal. For Warren, it's about self-control. If he can decide which Peter Parker is the original, then he decides who Gwen really loved. If he can clone Gwen, clone Peter and clone himself, maybe his mind is fixing everything that went wrong in his own twisted sense. Maybe this time, Gwen doesn't die. Or maybe Peter just never existed, and maybe he finally wins. And that's when you realize that this guy's beyond saving.
Get this man to a hospital, now!
What?
He's basically playing God in a world made out of his own trauma. He's surrounded by masks, mirrors, failed experiments. It's like he's rewriting the world one bad copy at a time. What started as grief turned into obsession, and that obsession turned into full-on madness. Spider-Man's out there fighting to protect the city, while Miles Warren's just trying to rebuild a version of the past that his twisted mind has somehow convinced him was stolen fate. Hell, there was even a clone of Gwen and Warren out there that, actually got married and settled down. It's genuinely some disturbing stuff. And to be honest, that's what makes it hit harder than any world-ending plot ever could. This guy is just so insane, it creeps me out. Then, years later, he unfortunately comes back, and somehow, he's even worse. This is during one of Dan Slott's biggest stories, The Clone Conspiracy. Now, this story all round was pretty bad. I never really enjoyed reading it, but there was one moment in particular that just never sat right with me, and that's just the suffering Ben Reilly had to endure here. So, the Jackal ends up bringing Ben back to life through his cloning means, but this time, he tortures Ben. He kills him over and over and over again dozens of times until Ben finally breaks. Listen, I don't know what Slott was thinking, but believe it or not, seeing Ben endlessly killed and brought back to life is not what I'd exactly call good writing. Oh, and also, there's just like multiple Warrens running around, serving whoever the Jackal is at the time, until they decay into sludge when things go wrong. It's just kind of stupid all round, just like the entirety of the Clone Conspiracy. But so why is the Jackal Spider-Man's freakiest villain? Well, that's actually quite easy. Because he's this weird old man that can't seem to ever let go of his warped sense of reality. He's obsessed with people, with Gwen, Peter, and with himself. He wants to endlessly recreate them to always be in control of the fantasy. And yeah, the Clone Saga doesn't help either. Being replaced by your clone, watching your clone die, not knowing if you're the clone, that was literally nightmare fuel for Peter. The Jackal takes Spider-Man, one of the most grounded heroes out there, and drags him into a full-blown existential crisis, all because this one professor couldn't seem to let go as his feelings for Gwen became a creepy obsession. So yeah, that's Miles Warren, Spider-Man's freakiest villain by a mile. Not because he's necessarily powerful or threatening, but because he's just off. I mean, look at him. There's something about him that's uncomfortable. You read a story with a Jackal in it and you don't really feel excited. You feel more uneasy because there's a high chance you're about to see yet another Gwen Stacy clone. Every time this guy shows up, things get messy, clones show up out of nowhere, people come back from the dead, Peter's entire life gets thrown into chaos, and the funny part is, it always circles back to the same thing. One guy who couldn't let go of a student who didn't even pay him much attention. That's literally the entire reason this nightmare exists, because one man had a really creepy crush, lost control, and decided science could bring her back. And decades later, it feels like Spider-Man's still cleaning up the mess. I honestly can't stand the Jackal. He's just too weird, you know? Like, there's characters, say, like Jack-O-Lantern. You know, he's kinda weird, but his design is like so cool, and he's all around a pretty fun character to read. This guy though, the Jackal, he's just unnerving weird. He's don't let him near a school kinda weird, which makes it worse since he's an actual, professor. But when you look hard enough, every villain in Spider-Man's world represents something. The Green Goblin is almost like chaos that destroys his life. Doc Ock can be seen as a mirror of what Peter could become if he ever let his ego take over. And Miles Warren, he's denial and obsession. He's what happens when you can't accept that something's over. He's the kind of guy who would rather live in a lie than move on. There's a reason every time the Jackal shows up, fans are instantly scared. And if you're not, I'm worried for you, because we all know what that means. It means confusion, chaos, fake outs, or identity crisis. But at the end of the day, that's a part of the charm, right? No, he kinda sucks, actually. Hello, welcome to another episode of Comics from the Stash. Today we're going over some of my Jackal comics from, all ranging from his time spent in The Amazing Spider-Man, I didn't pick out every issue that I have of him, even from ASM, but it's the main stuff. You know, some of the covers are more, you know, they feature more of him, because he did appear in a lot of stories where he just wasn't really, you know, in the forefront of the cover. But yeah, let's get straight into it. Starting off with one of his most creepy covers, we have The Amazing Spider-Man issue 399. Then, this issue here is when Peter, I believe, basically deduced that he is, in fact, the real McCoy. You know, he's not the clone. You know, which is just funny, because he had the answer, and he never looked at it, he ripped it away, he's like, I'm convinced. If only he checked that, because then that would have literally, you know, made the Clone Saga just never have happened. So, bad luck, Peter. It is issue 150 of ASM. Then, the first appearance of Ben Reilly before he was Ben Reilly, we have issue 149. Then, we got Tarantula, the clone of Gwen, Jackal, and Spider-Man all in one cover with 148 of The Amazing Spider-Man. Felt really bad for Peter in this story here. This is when the clone of Gwen first basically appeared, and yeah, Peter was not in a good place because of this. Issue 144. Then we have my goat, Hammerhead, in this cover. It's got Jackal in the background. Not really, you know, it's like with the other issue, he's not really in the forefront. He's just sort of there, just being a weirdo. It is issue 130. Now, this is a big issue, very big key issue. You know, people really want this for the Jackal and not for anyone else. Yeah, it is issue 129, the first appearance of the Jackal and the Punisher. Yeah, I don't know who the Punisher is. I only got this for the Jackal. Then to end it off, we have the start of one of my favorite stories ever of Spider-Man. Issue 31 of The Amazing Spider-Man, If This Be My Destiny, and it is the first appearance of Professor Miles Warren. But that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because here, any support means so much. It's really interesting how, you know, the first appearance of Miles Warren and the first appearance of the Jackal are books that are actually worth a lot because of the other first appearances included. Like, first appearance of Miles Warren has, you know, the first Gwen, first Harry, Peter goes to ESU, and then, you know, the first Jackal has the Punisher. So it's just kind of weird how he sort of managed to sneak into such crucial books of the Marvel Universe. But yeah, thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.